In this video I'm going to explain how to put answers into context because a lot of people struggle with how to get the context in there. So this first one, we've got a scenario about psychologists wanting to investigate if there's a correlation between how interested the person is in cars and their driving skills. And we've got an answer here of saying what the strength of it is. So strength of using a correlation would be that variables can be plotted on a scatter graph so that it's easy to see visually if there's a relationship between variables. This is easier than carrying out another research method such as an experiment where data might need to be analysed in more detail to see results. So if we copy that in there, the strength of using a correlation would be that the results of how interested a person is in cars and their driving skills, variables, can be plotted on a scatter graph so it is easy to see visually if there's a relationship between them. This is easier than carrying out another research method such as an experiment where driving skills and interest in cars might need to be analysed in more detail to see the results. That's actually a really rubbish point. Yeah, that would actually be changing. This is easier to carry out than other research. Another research and experiment would need to be tested, which would take more time and money and be unnecessary if there was no relationship between them. That's better. That actually is changing. That's rubbish. Okay, next one. Psychologists want to investigate if there's a correlation between how interested a person is in cars. Also, same one. So then we've got a weakness using a correlation that causality cannot be established, as it can only be seen that two variables are related and not which is causing the other. So it can only be seen that driving skills and interest in cars are related and not which is causing the other. For example, a person's driving skills may make them less or more interested in cars, or but this is not known by just looking at a relationship. That's not amazing, but it'll do. Psychologists want to investigate the correlation between fear of snakes and how ugly they are perceived to be. So we've got a strength of using a correlation would be that it's a good starting point for research, as it allows the researcher to see the natural strong relationship between fear of snakes and how ugly they are perceived to be. So that just replaces that one. This then justifies conducting further research experimentally to establish causality and see if it is the fear of the snake that influences how ugly they are perceived, or how ugly they are perceived influences how much people fear them. Or if, see if we can get this in the page. So we've got a strength using a correlation, but it's a good starting point for research, as it allows the research to see if there is an actual strong relationship between the two, between fear of snakes and how ugly they're perceived to be. This then justifies conducting further research experimentally to establish causality and see if it is the fear of the snake that influences how ugly they're perceived, or if how ugly they're perceived influences how much people fear them. Next one. So same scenario, but this time it's a weakness. So we've got a weakness of using a correlation is that there could be other extraneous variables which are contributing to the relationship found between the two variables under investigation. This is a problem as it looks like there's a relationship when in fact there might not be, and so results are invalid. So a weakness of using a correlation is that there could be other extraneous variables which are contributing, I should say, to the relationship found between, get rid of that, fear of snakes and how ugly they're perceived to be. And this is in fact such as if the snake is poisonous. This is a problem as it looks like there's a relationship when in fact there might not be, and so results are invalid. So again, I've put in kind of, I'm saying there's going to be another extraneous variable. I need to put an example that gives me some context there to get marks. And then the final one, we're looking at a correlation between depression and drug use. So we've got a strength of a correlation is it allows us to investigate if there's a relationship between variables that would be impractical or unethical to manipulate. So this is because the two variables are usually naturally occurring or secondary data from other sources, and so you are simply correlating figures, perhaps from self-report, rather than conducting an experiment. The strength of using a correlation is that it allows the investigation of the using a correlation is it allows the investigation of depression and drug use, which are variables that would be impractical or unethical to manipulate. Depression and drug use are naturally occurring or secondary data from other sources, and so you're simply correlating figures rather than conducting an experiment. If that makes sense. The strength of using correlation is it allows the investigation of depression and drug use, which are variables that would be impractical and ethical to manipulate. Depression and drug use are usually naturally occurring or secondary data from the sources. Let's put there such as a self-report, and so you are simply correlating figures rather than conducting an experiment. There we go. So I hope you found that helpful. All of those answers there would get full marks because they are giving a weakness or a strength. They are explaining why that is a weakness or a strength, and more crucially, they are explaining them in context. So everywhere, so say even, when I said an extraneous variable, and I've given an extraneous variable that's relevant to that scenario, so that snake being poisonous, that kind of thing is what context is, not necessarily just repeating what's in the scenario, like what's in here. You're not just simply repeating that, you're kind of thinking about things of how they link to it. That's proper context, and that's what the examiner wants to see, because that shows that you actually truly understand what you're talking about. I hope you found that helpful. If you've got any questions, just let me know.